Welcome to our mental health webinar series. Our topic today looks at how the pandemic has added to the existing concerns of cyberbullying. Traditionally, cyberbullying is defined as the use of electronic communication to bully a person, typically by sending messages of an intimidating or threatening nature. However, with the ongoing pandemic and an increased amount of online interaction and engagement, the statistics of online behavioral issues and the mental health consequences are quite severe. In India, a recent study by Child Rights and You, CRY, a non-governmental organization, found around 9.2% of 630 adolescents surveyed in Delhi had experienced cyberbullying, and half of them had not reported to teachers, guardians, or any social media companies. And according to India Spend, a study titled Online Study and Internet Addiction, released on February 18th of 2020, the probability for being bullied online indeed rose with increased internet usage, as expected. These hint at a darker side to technological evolution and the kind of devastating effects it has on our online image and everyday lives. In our two-part series of the impact of cyberbullying on mental health, we'll look at psychological effects of cyberbullying, the role of social media in cyberbullying, examples of cyberbullying, and some therapies that could be employed. With us today, we have Kevin Peter, a psychologist from SoftMind, and Mitra Banerjee, the COO of Astrid, and a psychological counselor at SoftMind. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we'll start with Mitra first. So usually cybersecurity is approached from a purely technical standpoint, and people are still trying to understand the behavioral aspect of it, popularly known as the people problem in cybersecurity. However, within the context of cyberbullying, what are cyber attacks based on?
This is a very interesting and a very complex one too. Cybersecurity attacks or cyber attacks, as experts say, are based on social engineering techniques. What I mean by social engineering techniques is that the perpetrators or the bullies, they use psychological manipulation techniques to trick the victims to inappropriately disclose sensitive information, or by presumably inappropriately granting access to a secure system. The main intent of the perpetrator is to harm the victim by psychologically manipulating that victim by using repetitive harmful behavior, and that gets ingrained into the subconscious of the victim. And the main thing is that the main intention of the perpetrator is to harm the victim, and by using anonymity and going incognito behind the internet. But the only difference with the traditional bullying is that the perpetrator, the power imbalance of the perpetrator is less explicit in the cyberspace as compared to traditional bullying.
So the perpetrator is empowered with a sense of anonymity, and that allows them to manipulate potential victims online.
That's correct. That's correct. Yes.
But then what makes the victims disadvantaged and fall prey to social engineering techniques from a power imbalance perspective?
The interplay, the interplay of trust and risk play a very significant role in cyberspace media, where, according to the experts, the perpetrator, they create a real life construct, in that cyberspace. And this in turn provides a communication platform for the victims, and where victims, location, sessions, and activities, victims online, because they're so frustrated with their real life, they're so depressed with their real life. Anything provided to them, so something real life, yet inflated with something good, that makes them very comfortable and trustworthy. The risk is that the victim does not know who the perpetrator is, because it is first of all, it's a virtual environment, and secondly, the victim may be talking to fictitious identity or even deceased, persons, and they are promising unbounded opportunities that seem so too good to be true for the victims. And in this way, the perpetrator or the bully very suavely, slowly, and skillfully influences the victim. So it is very, very harmful for them.
So the virtual space provides them with a scenario to escape, and that's exactly where the manipulators can come in and play on their trust, in a sense.
That's absolutely right. It's an escape for the victims and a good, place for the perpetrator to influence the victims, to do whatever they want. That power, imbalance, making them more powerful, like a hero-like scenario, that kind of thing. And, they are the heroes taking the victims to a different plane, the Messiah complex. So, Kevin can explain, more, from a psychology perspective, what's the exact way they do it, But this is, how the technique is as such, the behavioral technique. Yes.
Kevin, we'll move to you from here. So we seldom get to hear much about the psychological effects of cyberbullying, typically experienced by victims, and don't really seem to understand the emotional space of cyberbullies. What do we know so far?
Right. Thank you, Apajita, and thank you, Esther, for having me. It's an interesting question that you asked, and often the common narrative is often centered around just the victim. I think it's also important to bring the perpetrator, into the limelight as well, see the psychological effects that they go through as well. And it's not exactly the same sinister, negative, harmful effects the victim goes through, but there are effects. So let's just focus on the effects that the victim goes through. It creates stress, plain and simple stress. It's a stressful activity, being bullied. It leads to heightened stress, for the victim, and it leads to creation of anxiety-like symptoms and depression-like symptoms. And for those who are suffering from anxiety disorders, it leads to an increase in anxiety disorder. And for those who are suffering from depression-like symptoms, it leads to an increase in depression-like symptoms. And just biologically speaking, the recurring pattern of heightened stress, it leads to an increase in C-reactive proteins, which have been linked to increased risk in cardiovascular ailments. So I'm not saying one may come in and you'll have a heart attack, no, but it's over the course of time. Just heightened stress over the course of time leads you to developing a lot of psychological issues like anxiety and depression. Also, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, is also an important factor. Even long after the event has occurred, even long after the bullying has happened, for the victim, they will have these thoughts, memories of recollections of what happened. And it will continue to bother them, affect them. And what's usually seen in PTSD times is this sort of dissociative disorder, wherein they escape into this alternate reality or personality to escape the clutches of just the harmful effects, the bad memories, the bad recollections. So all in all, it leaves the victim in a very poor mental state. Just quickly touching upon the perpetrator, what it does to them. Just bullying in general, what it does to a perpetrator is it leads to a heightened sense of importance, an exaggerated sense of well-being, of self rather. And this means that and it's also because of the apparent anonymity that the internet offers, which in itself is wrong, because nothing we do online is anonymous. But for the perpetrator, for a bully, they feel like they can get away with it by being invincible, because it's all online and it offers anonymity. And since they continue to do it, and as long as they continue to do it without getting reported, they will go on and hurting more people. And at some point, they might feel so confident enough to do this in real life, bully a person in real life based on the almost no consequence effect that they did it by the online method. And it is there usually that they find that there are real life consequences, actions, karma, justice when you do it in real life. So these are the psychological effects, I would say, for both the victim and the perpetrator.
It's interesting when you mentioned the dissociation that kind of it sort of penetrates the subconscious mind or the psyche of both the perpetrator and the victim. So from the bully's perspective, I guess, I mean, could we say that this particular dissociation, because from the bully's perspective, they're also experiencing the psychological dissociation that predisposes them to bully and to continue to bully online, and that increases their self-confidence. So would you say that the heart, or one of the traits very strongly associated with both the bully and the perpetrator, is this dissociation that both seem to experience at a psychological level? Kevin?
It happens for a variety of reasons, for different reasons rather.
Mm-hmm.
For the victim, it's a means of escape, and for the perpetrator, it's just how they do it. It's a lot of such perpetrators can be classified under having sociopathic tendencies, having antisocial personality issues, and when they do it, it's a choice almost. They are choosing to be someone else, to check that checklist, to be mean, to be rude, to get something out of it,
Right.
monetary or sexual or whatever.
Right.
So the dissociation for the perpetrator is almost a choice, and for the victim, it's not a choice. It just happens. It's how the psyche, the subconscious, deals with the trauma.
It's almost a coping mechanism, if you can use that term loosely over here.
Yeah, we can.
We can. So Kevin, when you do compare it to face-to-face bullying, do you find that there is a difference in the way victims respond to the perpetrators, so online versus face-to-face bullying, and the way the victims are responding to both scenarios, and the perpetrators in particular?
There are differences. No, I recently read a report which said that boys tend to be bullied more physically and girls tend to be bullied verbally. So online space is that space which, weirdly enough, ironic enough, offers equality to both the sexes, where everyone gets bullied, boys and girls. And but jokes apart, it's horrible, so we shouldn't. What it does is, see, in real life bullying, there's a time limit, if I can use it, if I can call it that.
Mm-hmm.
But online bullying, as the name suggests, is through internet, and internet isn't something that we switch off. Internet is something that we carry in our pockets 24/7. So that translates to getting bullied 24/7.
Right.
And another difference is in real life bullying scenarios, if someone will speak up. When you see someone getting bullied, the chances of someone speaking up, raising a hand, raising a voice, a peer, a child, an adult, someone saying something is more, it's exponentially more. So that brings an end to the bullying. But in the online space, that doesn't happen, does it? It's just very solitary responses. It's just the victim and the perp, victim and the perp. And it can go on for hours. And also in real life, it's usually one-on-one, or maybe 2 or 3 or 4 at most. So there's 4 people in a group, in a clique, bullying a person. But in the online sphere or online space, it's tens and hundreds and maybe thousands. Just go to a Twitter thread or a Facebook comment section. It's thousands of people against one person. So it's just, it can't even be compared, the online bullying versus the real life bullying. And also one more thing is, we all have identities in the online space, who we are, who we think we are, and who we want other people to see us as.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been seen that complaining about bullying is often seen as snitching, seen as being whining and just being, not being up to the standard, like you're not good enough, you're not courageous enough to face the world of online media. So people often keep quiet, like they take it almost like it's par for the course. Bullying is par for the course. If you're online, you'll get bullied, which is the wrong mentality. But these are some of the differences, I would say, the main differences when it comes to online bullying.
Mitra, what kind of impact does this social media platform and network have on cyberbullying?
I think Kevin has very nicely and very, elaborately talked about, the impacts. But I'll say from a non-psychological point of view, very like from a behavioral perspective, that the social media platform and network has significant impact on cyberbullying. And since we're mentioning the word bullying, therefore we can say that it has a negative connotation attached to it, so to speak. Now, the average time spent by people per day in the social network is around 7.2 hours. Like I do it, I can say from my perspective. And we have heard from people and very, sort of social kind of research. I've not done in-depth academic research. And for the teenagers, the numbers are much higher, which is can up to be 27 hours per week. So this addiction to social media has a very negative impact on the health of the people, as Kevin mentioned. He discussed on the psychological side. I can say from a very addiction and behavioral perspective that when the people get addicted and influenced by social media, they feel very depressed, as Kevin was mentioning, that they are bullied, they are told a lot of things which they don't like, they're being dissociated from their identity. So, those kind of, they're not aware. And because they cannot understand, because they're unconscious, but they're not feeling okay, so they sometimes feel depressed, they sometimes feel aggressive, and sometimes this may give rise to confusion, cluster headaches, and stress, So once people are hooked to the internet, they tend to ignore these behavioral challenges which they face because they are dissociated, they're unconscious, yet they're feeling discomfort which they cannot express. And this gets translated in day-to-day communication and also in their profession. So therefore, I can say that the social media platform and network it can have, I could say, a negative impact on cyberbullying,
But it just seems,
I can say that, yes.
It seems like a combination of awareness or lack of awareness, both from the psychological standpoint and also the functionality of the cyberspace, which has brought about this issue at a social level. And also, as it suggested that, you don't have many victims reporting to the relevant guardians or parents in the case of children, or companies that can actually help them understand the pitfalls of the cyberspace. So it's a fantastic beginning. So thanks to both of you. And this concludes part 1 of the webinar. Stay with us for part 2, where we discuss some examples of cyberbullying. And Kevin, we'd like to know a little bit more about the coping mechanisms for victims and their families. So it'll be great to actually touch base on that in the next part. Thank you, both of you.
Thank you, Parijita, for having us.
Thank you for having me.